Welcome to Cambridge House Live. I'm Bridget Anderson, and I'm joined by Peter Schiff here at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. You are the CEO and Chief Global Strategist at Euro Pacific Capital, also fairly recent author of a book, The Real Crash, America's Coming Bankruptcy. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me on.
And let's start off with your book about America's coming bankruptcy. Give me your overview of where you think the American economy is.
Well, first of all, it's my most recent book. The first book I wrote came out in February of 2007, and that was called Crash Proof: How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse. The reason this book is titled The Real Crash is because the economic collapse that I wrote about in my '07 book hasn't happened yet. In that book, I did write about the housing bubble and why I believed it was going to burst, or why I believed there was a bubble.
You were right on the leading edge of that.
And I wrote about the ensuing financial crisis that would result from the bursting of the housing bubble. And so I did forecast the Great Recession that began in 2007. But more important than that was what I believed would come next. And that hasn't happened yet. That's the real crash. Because what really was worrying me was I was afraid the government would respond to the financial crisis by doing more of the same policies that caused it, which is more deficit spending, more cheap money, more central banking and central planning. And as a result, I think the U.S. economy is now poised for a much bigger collapse. I think that what's coming is a sovereign debt crisis and a currency crisis that will make the financial crisis of '08 look like the proverbial Sunday school picnic. I think that it's going to be much worse than what Europe has been going through.
And do you think that investors and Americans are prepared for that?
No, not at all.
So how do you tell them that? How do you prepare people for that?
Well, in many cases, the tendency is to shoot the messenger. So a lot of people, don't want to hear it. But I think I've been able to get some credibility with a minority of the public. We have a lot of clients of my brokerage firm that are investing with me, and we're trying to help people at least protect their savings. I think the biggest threat is to the value of the dollar. And so a lot of Americans who depend on the dollar, depend on its value for their standard of living, people who are retired or people who have accumulated a lot of financial wealth, they need to take action quickly to divest themselves. So we recommend that clients own gold and silver. We help them invest abroad, including up here in Canada. We buy foreign stocks, foreign currencies. We look for ways to diversify globally to reduce the reliance on the U.S. dollar.
So you were at the leading edge of seeing what was happening in the real estate market and subprime. And now you're calling for this situation, the basic collapse of the currency and a meltdown in the economy. What do you see that maybe others don't see, or how do you read that?
I don't know. I haven't bought into all the Keynesian nonsense, so I think I think a little bit more clearly. It's not that I'm smarter than everybody else.
You're looking for different things.
Well, my judgment isn't so clouded by a lot of that dogma, and so I think my head's on straight, and I think I can think logically about things. I mean, if you go back to the housing bubble, and so many people just got caught up in the idea that housing prices always rose, that they never bothered to figure what might happen if they fell. But to me, it seemed obvious that housing prices would fall eventually. And since I understood that, then I can connect the dots to see what was going to happen. But if you were operating under the premise that real estate prices could never fall, if you drank so much of that Kool-Aid, then it didn't matter. How much data you got, you still couldn't figure out what was going to happen. And I think people still have this view of the U.S. as this, supremacy of our economy, of the almighty dollar. We're the biggest economy in the world, and they've lost track of why America was successful in the first place, and why America of today bears no resemblance to America of the past. And that right now we're just living literally on borrowed time. We're not producing. We have gigantic trade deficits. We have enormous liabilities, budget deficits, national debt.